Hello, welcome to another episode of Worship Conversations with my friends and Table Talk series. And if you haven't seen the other episodes, I would highly recommend go check out the other episodes because there's amazing content. And my heart behind all of this is hopefully to inspire you, again, to create conversations with your friends or peers, and also I think I'm learning a lot through this process of like talking to my friends and having these conversations and growing in like what is actually worship means to me in this season. So I have the privilege of having my wonderful guest, Ali Richard. Ali Richard is a phenomenal pianist, keyboard. You play keys,
Yes,
of course, in
yes.
worship context. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
So, and she's been serving at our church here at Bethel, and I got to know Ali through our school. We went to school. Supposedly, I was supposed to graduate with you, but I took a gap year for my third year, and and after that, I'm here now. Anyways, I'll let Ali introduce herself, and we'll go from there.
Hi guys, I'm Allie, like he said. We went to the same school. That's how we met. I currently work for the school that we both went to. And I'm involved in worship here and all different aspects from Sunday mornings to school things to prayer meetings here and there. I do a lot of little things. I love worship so much. I could talk about worship forever. It's been in my life, gosh, since I was a little kid. So yeah, I'm excited to just sit and chat with you about worship and just, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm curious, like, tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how, this is a question that I throw at all of my guests, to basically ask them, like, what was worship to them in the past and what is worship to them right now and where it's heading in their life or however it is. It kind of sounds very deep in theology, but, I just would like to know how it started for you.
Yeah.
And
Amazing.
you can share.
Yeah. Okay. So, gosh, like I said, worship's been a part of my life since like I was born. I grew up in a very musical family. I was a church kid. My mom led worship. My dad was a musician. All of my siblings do something with worship, whether it's music or singing, leading worship. Also, like, I grew up, my uncle was a worship leader, like my great uncle, like, it's just all throughout my family line. So I've always been like exposed to it. I grew up going to band rehearsals and choir rehearsals, and I was just a little kid running around in the back. So, I've always just been exposed to that world. But when I was about 13, I was actually kind of like a shy kid. I would sing, but I was like shy to sing by myself. So my dad was like, "Hey, I'm going to teach you how to play bass."
Wow.
So my first instrument was actually bass.
No way.
Yeah, so I learned bass and I just became like obsessed with like learning instruments. Like, I don't know, something just like clicked with me, like with bass. And I just loved to, like, I would sit there and like try to figure stuff out for so long, and I would like ask him to teach me more stuff, and I was like, I'm ready to join youth worship team. Like, I was like, Dad, like, get me to a point where I could get on youth worship team. And so as I would learn that, then I was on youth worship teams playing bass. And if you know music, like, I would stand by the piano player in case I would get like lost during worship, because I did know the notes on a piano, but at this point I didn't really know any piano except for like the notes. So I would just stand by him and I would just like watch his hands. And then one night, like during worship, I was like, I think I want to learn piano. Like, I was like, I think that's what I want to do. The bass was kind of big. Like, I was a smaller kid. So I was like, this is heavy and big. Like, this feels like too much for me. And so it was really like, it's one of those moments where I look back now and I know it was like the Lord kind of like nudging me towards those things where when I was 13 and 14, I didn't have language for that. I just thought like, oh, I want to do this. So I remember asking my dad, I was like, so for piano, is it like the right hand is playing what the guitar player is playing, the left hand's the bass? Like, I had no knowledge of what it was. And he was like, kind of, sort of, not really. And so from that moment on, I was like, I think I could figure this out. I never had a piano lesson. I would just sit down with chord charts and I would kind of just try to figure out. I knew a chord was made up of 3 notes. And so I became like, piano became my obsession. So I was about 14-ish at this time. And so I just wanted to learn piano. I would go to band practices. I would sit behind the piano player. I was YouTubing like all the time. I was just like, I need to know what this is, like figuring out scales. I always tell people I feel like I learned piano backwards just because I had to teach myself. And so I would just kind of like pick up what I knew and what I would learn. So from there, like, I kind of like wanted to know how. I got chords down, I got like scales, but like I wanted to know how to create. And that is what I feel like changed something in me, like when it came to like worship. And like hindsight, I know it's the Lord kind of like putting that inside of me. I was just like, I want to know how to play off the page. Like, it became not so much about learning a song, but it came about like, how can I create a song, a melody? Like, what does that look like? So through a lot of painful processes, I would just like sit down at the piano, and I had a pastor tell me, you know, you should like sit down and like pray while you're playing. At this point, like, I knew chords and stuff, but like creating melodies was not, it didn't come easy to me, because I was like, I want to know exactly what to do. And creating, nobody tells you what to do. You have to just kind of find it yourself. And so I used to go over to my grandparents' house because they had like this real piano. And I would sit and I would play, and I would just like use it as my time, like spending time with the Lord on it.
Absolutely.
And I didn't realize that what I was doing, like looking back, I'm like, okay, like I was digging wells back then with the Lord, creating history and spending time with him on this piano. And back then I didn't see what it would become. I kind of just thought like, oh, this is something like I just want to do. And then I remember specifically one time, at this point I could kind of play like for youth, and I would play on Sundays. But I remember one time like being at my grandparents' house playing on the piano, and I just felt like the presence of God. And this wasn't something like, I had been in the presence of God before, but I've never had this feeling outside of church, like on my own accord. And in that moment, like my hands got really heavy, and I just like felt the Lord. I was by myself, and I just kind of like stopped playing, and like, because my hands were heavy. And I was like, God, like, is this you? And at that moment, I realized like I can encounter God through this.
Wow.
And so it became something where I was like, I know that for whatever reason, it wasn't that my playing was like extravagant. It was, I think it was the taking time to just spend time with the Lord, and intentionally like, I'm gonna seek you through this instrument, which is not something like I'd ever done before. Like without words, without a song planned, like just me creating with the Lord. Like he met me there. And I think it was then that I realized, not the weight of it, not the full weight of it, until like now I can look back and see like, okay, God was like calling me to something, and that was like a marking moment, like almost like a commissioning at that point. But I just realized, I was like, okay, like the Lord for some reason really likes whenever I play for him. Like,
Right.
it's not that it's great. And I
Yeah.
think that's the thing about like worship now is like a lot of worship and what you see kind of on stage is built from moments like that where you're spent just
that's so
personal
good.
time with him
Right.
and your instrument or whatever it is. And I think what was so unique for me was like I didn't have to use words. I didn't have to say the right thing. I didn't even necessarily have to play the right thing. It was just like when I take time to do this and set aside time, like the Lord meets me here. And I think through doing that over the years, like you dig wells with the Lord and you create history. And so when you're on stage and you're playing on a Sunday or a set, it's almost like those wells come out of you because you've already dug them and
Right.
you've done that on your own time. So like since then it just became a journey of like just like meeting the Lord in those spaces of like creativity. And I've had the Lord like meet me numerous times in those moments with just me and him, and you know, give me things and words and melodies and even like songs from those moments that have kind of like taken me to where I am now, like, and just shaped worship for me. Yeah, it just all started with me like using that to like learn with the Lord. And I think like the Holy Spirit like taught me a lot of the things that I know now, like about piano. So yeah, it just from then on it just kind of like snowballed and snowballed until like I'm here. And
Wow.
yeah, I'm still in awe of like how the Lord took that moment from when I was 15 and he's just been continuing to like follow me almost with that. So yeah, it was kind of a long story,
Yeah,
but
no, I love every every bit of that because I think one thing that I love how you share, like it started as when you were 15 and it like the Lord used that deep well. And now for people who don't know, Ali, I think you have been playing a lot like than before. Like you're playing on Sunday teams and you're traveling with a musician and you're playing for them as well. And it's just I'm just amazed. I think I love how you touched on that. It's all started with the presence, because like a lot of my journey personally is like it is also like I know Jen Johnson talks about singing off the page, but it's just so fascinating that you say that's playing off the page. It's just such a beautiful thing. Like no, I play keys. I play all the time, but I never thought about it in that dimension, and it's just fascinating to me. Anyways, that is so beautiful. So, why don't you talk to us about? I know you spent a lot of time, and now you're traveling, you're playing, and you also led music worship focused trips. Evangelizing, using that as a tool as evangelism and all of that. Talk to us about in order. I mean, you talked a little bit about your spiritual journey of having that building that wells. Like, in order to get there, and I know we were having a conversation earlier before we started this episode. You were talking about how long it took you to like build that discipline. Talk to us about how you built that muscle and how it's like valuable, and how do you use your muscles that you built over the years now?
yeah, so I think for me, like it became more of like it didn't feel like, oh, I need to like practice, and like it felt more like, oh, I'm spending time with the Lord. And I think that for me made it a lot easier to like, because it didn't feel like, oh, I need to grind and I need to practice every day and I need to do this and that. It felt more like, well, I'm just spending time with the Lord. Like, I know God will meet me if I go and do this. And I actually have learned and developed so many skills and things that I didn't necessarily have words for. It's almost like the technical and like the theory and all that kind of part of piano came after. So yeah, I think for me it was more just like I like realized like, oh, God like meets me here. And so that became my obsession, was like when I go and I play piano and I create, God meets me here. So for that, I mean, it made it really easy to want to like spend time on my instrument and spend time learning and, creating new things. And it almost like the learning new things kind of was like, I want to have more language for like, like I believe like the Lord like gives melodies and like heavenly melodies. And so I want to be able to go where he goes, kind of thing. And, even on Sundays, we go off the page a ton, here at Bethel. And so for me, it was like, I don't want to like be a hindrance to where the Lord wants to go. And so that also kind of fueled me to like practice and keep up with it. But I mean, for me, it was always just about like God showing up. Like, I think even when like I approach a set, like obviously I do all the practical things. You create a foundation, and then you kind of use that foundation. You're like, Lord, you can do whatever you want with it. And so for me, it was kind of never about like me becoming like this great musician, like, I don't know, that might sound kind of funny, but like, I think it was always just like, how much deeper can I go with the Lord with this? Like, there's no end to him. So there's no end to what I can discover with him. And I feel like the Lord has, like, I almost can't even credit it to me, because I just feel like the Lord, since I was 15, has just put me in places that like were bigger than me. Even sometimes being here, I'm like, what? Like, it just feels so much bigger than me. Right. But like when you give God your yes, like, and you tell the Lord, like, I remember being 15 and like just telling the Lord one time, nothing to do with piano, nothing to do with music, but I told him, like, I was like, okay, I'm gonna give you my yes, like, whatever that looks like. And the Lord has truly just put me in places where I could have never put myself. Like, it's not like I was seeking these things out. And I think that really comes from just surrender, which is not always easy. Like, it's not that it was like just everything came so easily, because surrender is, saying no to a lot of other things. Right. There's a reward and there's like a prize, which I mean really is like the more of God, like that's the prize. But yeah, for me, I really just, I mean, I can't credit it to anything I've done. Right. It's really like the Lord putting me in the right place at the right time, and putting the right people in my life to help me grow and steward these gifts that like God has given me. And I feel like a lot of it is like bigger than me, and it's bigger than anything that I could work for and kind of steward, which is an interesting place to be, because it's like you have to fully rely on the Lord, because it's like, absolutely, he put me here. I can't sustain out of my own gift. I could try, but it's going to cause me a lot of more stress and anxiety to try to keep up with, like, have my giftings carry me. And I think that's super important to remember and to like rely on. Like, if God put me somewhere, like, he can sustain me. And if it's not about me, then, I don't have to uphold some like level of like gifting or talent.
Right.
I don't
Right.
know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love how you're pointing out to ultimately it's the Lord who does the biggest. He's in the big picture. I guess my if I want to dive a little bit deeper into that, what would you say to someone? Because not a lot of people don't see the history that you built or the hard work you did with the Lord. And what would you say to somebody who's like in the process? Okay, I want to serve the Lord, and but I'm not even being put in these places. I'm not even being in that place.
Yeah.
What would you say to some people who are in their process of in their journey of like, I want to serve the Lord, but I'm having all of these. I'm faithfully, like I'm learning my skills. I'm learning all of that. I'm putting work in, but I'm not being able to serve.
Yeah,
and
totally.
Because like I know like you're always on. Some people who don't know, like when you're on the stage, they only see the on the stage side of
totally.
They don't see the hard work.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's really easy sometimes to talk from a perspective of like, like having all these opportunities and having all these things being given to you. But like you said, a lot of people don't see the years and years and years of me, like just me and the Lord. Like there was no one else with me when I was going to my grandparents' house and playing on that piano. Like it was just me. And I actually feel like those hidden seasons, as you could say, like are those seasons where you're kind of building. Those are so important, more important than any stage, any opportunity. I know that sometimes it's easier being on the other side to talk about it, but like those are the moments that you're building a root system. You're building something deeper, that when you are put in those places, like those are the moments that you pull out that sustain you. Those are the moments that you're like relying on. And if you haven't built those things, like the same thing with a tree, that if it's not fully rooted, a wind could come and just blow it over. And I know people have probably said that before, but it's so true. And I've had times where, a lot of people don't know, like, about me, like, before coming here, like, some really tough times in church, really tough times in family, like, really difficult things that I've had to walk through, where those moments with just me and the Lord were, like, my lifeline.
Right.
And if you don't build those moments, if you don't build the secret place, then when you get those big moments, like, ultimately those things crush you. And I even think, because there could also become a thing where you're getting these opportunities and people are putting you in places, but you're like having to sustain them through your own gifting. And like then there's always more, like there's always more opportunity that you could go after. There's always something greater. And I think some people are like, if I could just get there, if I could get opportunity on that stage, then I would be happy. But the truth is, and I'm saying this from experience, that's not actually the case. There's always more that you'll want if it's out of your own desire. So you have to learn how to live from, like, this is not about me, Lord. If you, like, let's say, I mean, I've told myself this question a lot of times, like, if I never got another stage, if I never got another opportunity, like, am I okay with that? And I think that's a really tough question. And sometimes, like, to be super vulnerable, like, my answer wouldn't have been yes. Like, But, you know, you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is not going to satisfy me. The reward is not the stage, the reward is him. And so in those moments where you're building and you're growing and you're learning with the Lord, those are the things that sustain you, because your skill could never sustain you. Like it just won't work that way. And it's just you can't skip the process, you know, like building a house. You can't skip the foundation because the house will just crumble.
Right.
And those moments are actually the most precious moments, where you're building that foundation with the Lord. You're getting to know the Lord. You're learning him. You're learning yourself, like how to create. And like I think a lot of people want to skip that. They want to skip that and just go straight to Z. But the truth is that will actually crush you, and you'll end up back in that space again. I mean, I think you see it like time and time again, where, you know, like if you just want the big. And I don't think God's as interested in the stage and opportunities as we are. I think God cares way more about your heart. And God's not really in a rush to get you opportunity. He's really not. Like I think we as humans, like we care about those things, but I truly don't, and this might be controversial, but I don't think God puts as much weight on those things as we do. Like he's like, if your heart's not right, he's a good father. He's not gonna put you in somewhere that'll crush you, you know? So yeah, it's there's no real easy shortcut way. Like you just have to establish that with the Lord. So
yeah. I really love the I think the valuable lesson, like I'm learning as you guys are listening, is like building a root system. Like root system is what's gonna sustain you. I mean, even if you look at the plants, like the plant right here, it's important. My plants are thriving right now. I have only like one or two plants, but they're thriving right now because I've been consistently taking care of them, like putting water and like making sure they are getting enough sunlight. I think I love that in this process. Sometimes we're always like, as humans, sometimes we want to see those opportunities, but it's all about building the root system and having healthy roots.
Totally.
But anyways, that is little plant theology. But I love it. Anyways, jumping into our next question, I really want to know, I love how you talked about a little bit of your journey. I would like to know, like, did you ever know, like, you're going to be serving in this capacity of worship, and you're going to be doing this for, I mean, we are all called to be worshipers, and we're all going to be the Revelation 4, we're all going to be in the eternal worshiping in the Lord. But did you ever know that you're going to be in this level of this opportunity, or what was a marking point in your life where you felt, okay, I'm going to pursue this, this is what the Lord is calling me?
I've had actually a few over the years. I feel like the Lord really like chased me down to kind of like really drive the point home. Sometimes I'm like I hear the Lord say something, I'm like, are you sure? Like, I don't know. But I think the first time I really knew that I was going to do something that was like bigger than me was when I was 15. Like when I talked about, I remember there was a moment in church one time, and if I'm honest, I don't remember what was going on in the service. It might have been a prayer meeting or something, but I remember like the Lord like just gripping my heart, and I was just like crying. And I remember the Lord saying, like, if you say yes to this, like, your life is going to look different. from your at 15. I'm in high school at this point.
Right.
And he's like, your life will look different from your friends. You're gonna go places that none of your friends are gonna go. Not in like a negative way, but like I remember him like telling me that, like, if you say yes, like this is what it's gonna look like. But I knew in my heart that I would never be happy outside of full surrender. Like I just in that moment was so aware of that. And so, I just told the Lord, I was like, what else am I going to do? Like, I don't want to live a life where I'm just comfortable. I've never, I say that, when you're 15, you don't fully know the full scope of what you're going to do, so you're like, yeah, 100%. Like, did I know the full weight of what I was saying yes to? I don't think so. I just knew that my life was going to look different. And that wasn't, like, really easy. Like, I come from a small town where everyone's life kind of looks the same. They kind of all do the same thing. And I'm not one to, like, rock the boat. Like, yeah, I was a pretty, like, shy to myself kid. Like, I wasn't one to just do something different to be different. So that was, like, a really scary thing for me, to have to be different. So I remember that moment, though, just saying, like, Lord, like, where else would I go? What else would I do? And so in that moment, I told him yes. Like, I'll give you my yes 100%. And since that moment, like, what he said literally has happened. Like, he's taken me places that are different from, most of the people that I've gone to school with and grew up with. And it's not that, it wasn't just easy and wonderful all the time. It was a lot of things that were difficult and hard and being misunderstood a lot of the time. I feel like growing up or like in high school, kind of getting out of high school, like I was kind of misunderstood a little bit. People would try to figure me out and, like I didn't have a big explanation for why. I was just like, I just have to say yes to the Lord. Like, I can't say yes to that. Like, I've made a promise, like, to the Lord that I would say yes to him no matter what it looked like. So in those moments, I almost feel like the Lord, like, he kind of just, like, guided me and protected me in those moments. So that was definitely a big moment where I knew my life was going to look different. I didn't know the full capacity of what it would look like. I think another marking moment, like skip ahead to school. We went on a trip to Orlando and we went to Jesus Image. And at this point, I mean, that was 2020. So I was like 26-ish, around that age. So I had known that I was like called to worship and just, I like to say, I just was going to say yes to the Lord, whatever that looked like, not absolutely. Necessarily like worship. Cause I think just say yes to the Lord. Yeah, say yes to the Lord, period. Like it doesn't have to be like worship, like I didn't just say yes to worship. I said yes to the Lord. But in that moment, like Michael Koulianos like took the whole team to the back room. And I've never felt the fear of the Lord like I did in that room. Like the whole team just got like quiet, like silent. And so we were just all like standing and Michael come and pray for us. And he like laid his hand on me and he was like, "You're not for sale." And I remember like just like dropping, and then he ends up coming back to me and then like saying it again, like, "You're not for sale." Right. And then he comes back to me again the third time and he's like, "I need you to like look at me and know this. Like, you're not for sale. You're not like a shiny object. Like, the Lord has given you something special. Like, you need to protect it." So good. And so I think in that moment I understood kind of more the weight of what the Lord had given me. Like, it wasn't just, here's a gift, here's a talent, and use it. It was more like, protect it. And I think that kind of goes back to, like, in that moment, I was almost reminded of those moments when I was 15, of those wells that I had dug with the Lord. And it was almost like, those are the things you need to protect. That's what makes you, like, different in a way. Not to say that anyone else hasn't had that experience, like, but for me, like, I felt like those are the things that make me uniquely me, like, with the Lord. And, you know, in a world where, sometimes in worship, like, there's different sounds and styles, and you can kind of learn to adapt, and, like, you lose what you've cultivated yourself. And so it was almost like that moment where it's like, that creativity, those things that I put in you when you were 15 and you discovered, like, those are the things that I'm going to use. So yeah, I think then I really kind of understood, like, the weight of what the Lord had given me. And it was honestly, like, it was for a while after that, I was like, this is a lot, God, like, that you're trusting me with something like this. Like, how do I steward that? Like, this seems kind of scary in a way. But again, like, going back to when I was 15, it was like, what else am I going to do, So I think I've always known that the Lord was going to put me in places that, like I've said before, that are bigger than me. I don't know that I even still understand, like, what the Lord is going to bring me into, but I think it always goes back to that. I'm saying yes to the Lord, whatever that looks like, and just continually saying yes to that. I think that's kind of where I try to just stay in that lane,
And I think that's a healthy place, saying yes to the Lord, regardless of, like, because I think one, who's this preacher? Banning Liebscher once said, like, God is not, he doesn't owe you anything. Like, you're not entitled to anything.
Totally.
And I think it's a good heart posture of, like, saying yes to the Lord, whatever you have, with whatever you have. It's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyways, I love, I could go, so many ways from this. But, I think, the other question I really want to dig in and ask a little bit about, since you have been playing on teams at our church, local church here at Bethel, and you have been actively serving. What do you think? I think, again, what do you think is, like, that eventually, like, what is the one core thing, like, if the rest of the world can use, okay, this is a major aspect of every worship team, everything. What do you think should be built, or, like, what do you think is missing in the current trend or generation? Because, like, there's a lot of, we have every Friday there is a new album coming out.
Totally.
I love it, but I'm also like, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, totally.
So what do you think is, like, the most important thing, like, for the local church or worship bands in general, worship teams?
Yeah. Gosh, I feel like that's a big question, but I think something for me that I've always just kind of, like, gone back to, and like you said, like, there's so much content being put out all the time, and I think there's also, like, this big movement of like what's pure worship and what's this, and a lot of kind of judgment on different, I guess, types of worship and styles. But I think the main thing for me that I guess I would share with a worship team is like, are you, first of all, like, this is actually not about any of us. Like, worship's not really about, I mean, worship is something we get to give to the Lord.
Yeah.
But I think anytime we kind of make it about us in a way, I think that's where things get kind of messy and things can go wrong really quickly. I think as worship leaders and worship, I mean, I think musicians are worship leaders as well. So that's another thing. Like,
doesn't have to be the front singer. It's everybody's
totally. I'm like, there are moments where the musicians can actually lead a room and then like give something to the worship leaders to kind of create something for them to, take a moment. But I think if like worship leaders are priests, like, and I think that's kind of how we should model our lives. Like the priests, like in the Old Testament, were held to a different standard than the rest of the people of Israel. So I think for us as worship leaders, like there is a higher standard of living, and I think consecration has a little bit been lost.
So good.
I think there's something to, and the Lord's been dealing with me about this as well, like there's something to like purity and consecration in your day-to-day life that will ultimately like affect worship. So if you're only concerned with that 40 minutes, that hour on stage, like I think we've lost the point of it. Because to me, worship is like a lifestyle, and I know people have said this before, but if your life doesn't reflect that, then I think you've lost the point a little bit. You can practice your skills, you can take lessons and hone all those talents and gifts, but I think if your life doesn't, if your life isn't worship, then it's gonna be really hard to like sustain those moments out of giftings and skills. Because I feel like if all you want to do is play music, like there are other opportunities for that. I just think that worship has lost a little bit of the consecration, and I do think that we should be held to a higher standard as priests. Like we're offering something to the Lord. Like it's not just 3 songs that we're learning and playing. It's not just chords that we've put together. It's not just melody lines, and it's not just words. Like what we're doing is actually ministry to the Lord, and I think it's something we should take very seriously. And I know some people are like, oh, it's not that serious. It's like, well, I think it should be.
Yeah.
It should be. Yeah. Like, because, like, this is ministry to the Lord. This is not about us. Like, it's never been supposed to be about us. This is an offering we give to God. And it's, it's easy to sometimes make it about us, because I think sometimes when you have your gifting and your talent, it's sometimes hard to detach that from who you are as a person. And there's a thing about your gift that is personal. But it's like, as a priest, like you're offering this very precious personal thing to the Lord for him to like, you're offering it to him for it to be pleasing to him. So if you're not taking that seriously, then then it's all for nothing. It's just noise. And I think like as worship, we have to kind of get back to that. Like, what does the Lord want? What is the Lord on? Like, what does he want to hear? And it's not always what we've done in the past. Like what has worked maybe for the past 5 years might not work anymore. And it's not a formula. Like it's really not a formula. So I think it's so important for worship leaders and musicians, like if you're not spending time with the Lord on your instrument or on your own accord, like it's going to be really hard to bring people somewhere you've never been yourself, you know? So I think that's something I would really like to see, is like people who are building those things, those relationships, in their own time, in their personal life, and consecrating themselves to the Lord, and really setting their life apart from others. Like purity is like a power, like purity is powerful. It's something that the Lord has given to us. And I think it really reflects through worship leaders and through musicians. Right. Like you can feel it in the room. You can see it. You're like, why is this worship leader, every time they just get on stage, they don't even have to say anything, but just their presence is like you feel God. And I think it's that consecration, that purity, that what that person is doing behind the scenes, that's way more important than what they do when they get on the stage. So, yeah.
I love how you talked about like worship being priesthood and consecration, and I love everything. And I think that's the I think it's the most important and precious holy, and that's why we're like even in the Revelations 4 we're doing the holy, and it's not about, I love how you talked about it's not about us, and also cultivating that heart, and I'm just to me it just feels so fresh. Even though we heard, I mean, so many people talk about the same concept of like worship is a lifestyle, worship is like what you do, not just on music. But I think right now I love to see teams and worship movement, the modern day worship movement. And my heart also through this podcast and my Instagram page is to cultivate that, bring us back to the priesthood. Because that's the most important thing. Anyways, that is so beautiful. Thanks for sharing. It feels really fresh, and I felt that weight on that word, priesthood, and it's just honoring. We're gonna wrap up real quick. Before we wrap up, I would like to. One quick question would be like, what is your, if you have a creative process, what is your creative process? Are you a person who likes to write down the structure, or you just like to do spontaneous things with any of your projects?
Yeah, I kind of really like off the page stuff. I mean, it depends on what it is. You know, like if I'm practicing for a Sunday, obviously I'm gonna like practice arrangement and song and everything like that. But like I really love just going off the page and kind of going back to what I said, like spending time with the Lord and kind of like communicating with him on like, okay, like what do you, even down to like what key should I play in, like and what chord progression, and everyone like has the Holy Spirit and he can speak to you and kind of give you those things. So I think that's the best way, like something that I've done, because I mean, gifts and talents, like I said, can only take you so far. And if you're not to that point yet that you know all the right answers and all the right things, really leaning in on the Holy Spirit and like asking him, what does he want to hear? That's really how I do it most of the time, is just following Holy Spirit. And
that is wonderful. And I think that is beautiful. I think a lot of people don't have the language of, there is this set list and I'm going to play this, but they don't think about the intentionality of like engaging the Lord. You can do it this with the Lord and partner with him. Well, it's been a wonderful conversation. As final thoughts, do you have, what's something that is refreshing thought or God thought or something that you are enjoying? It's getting cold and it's beautiful weather. And one of our guests, Jersey, mentioned that she loves fall and she's just liking the fall.
Yes.
So, anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be.
Goodness. I mean, I also enjoy cold weather, but Yeah, I don't know. I think I've been really just enjoying like being able. I've been traveling a little bit more lately, and that's been
Mm-hmm.
cool. I really love to travel, see new places, do new things, have new experiences. So yeah, that's something I've just been really enjoying being a part of these past
Mm-hmm.
couple months. So
That's
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah.
Well, well, thank you guys for listening to our conversation, Ali. I super appreciate you taking time and having this conversation. I love that I get to have these deep conversations,
Mm,
and I love that we can inspire a few people.
mm.
And so, please, guys, check out these episodes. And again, super honored. Every time you play keys, I am just like lost in the presence. So, thank you for carrying that wonderful heart and 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 just projecting it through your music.
Thank you.
And thanks for blessing us.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. It was fun. That's fun.
Absolutely. Peace out, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.